Like the bean, because it's time for Nerdy for 30 podcast where we talk about nerdy-ish movies for 30-ish minutes. My name is Kevin Bauer, aka the Critics' Choice. With me, as always, once again, is the People's Champ, Tim Keck.
If you feel it, chase it, baby.
If you feel it, chase it, baby. And today, we're talking about Daredevil Born Again. This is, a real shot across the bow for the MCU fans out there. People are abandoning ship, Tim. Everybody's trying to run like there's bubonic plague rats that snuck on over on our way from England to whatever place England is colonizing next. And I got to say, I was one of those people trying to jump. I'm looking for a lifeboat. I'm bodying the bands that are playing on the Titanic as the ship goes down. Daredevil Born Again was a hint that maybe, just maybe, I put my swim trunks on too early. Tim, what do you think?
Okay, so before we realized that I had fucked up the Zoom, you asked me how I've been doing. Yeah. That's me just killing all momentum you've tried to build like 3 times. Like people missed the first 2, but Kevin has been a real soldier just out here, just working up energy and sending it back my way. And I have just continued to shut it down with technical difficulties. And now with just completely pulling the rug out from under you to talk about something else after that setup for Daredevil.
Tim, it's the 9th inning. The bases are loaded. There's 2 outs, and you just bunted, my man.
I'm bunted. Bases loaded. This man's bunting. We got it. Bring in the bunter. So I did remember
DB,
this.
DB, designated bunter.
This was a thing that happened to me recently. And I feel like I talked about this on the show before that I get migraines. So I've been taking these like shots. I stab myself in the leg with them every month. And that's supposed to help the migraines. And I think it has. Maybe it hasn't, but I'd like to think it's working. So I went to this new neurologist. I've never been to a neurologist before. And I had to go to the neurologist to get this stuff. Right. And the neurologist, as part of me showing up there, was like, oh, you should do an MRA scan just so we can check because, maybe there's like tumors or something in your head causing these migraines. And I'm like, everyone in my family gets them. There's no way it's a tumor. It's fine. It's okay. So then I do the MRA, no worries in the world. The MRI is a little scary, right? Because they like lock you in like this coffin thing that makes loud noises. It's like they come installed with a speaker that just makes random booming sounds while you're doing it. Like I've never heard a machine like just makes this.
It's like being inside the cable that connects you to dial-up internet.
Yeah.
But for an hour.
It feels like people are actively working on the machine as it's scanning you. Like there's wrenches banging pipes in the back and you like can't hear it. So it's crazy. And I went in and I was just trying to soak in the whole experience. So like I slid into that thing and they're like, you want like a mask or anything? And I'm like, no, I'm good. They're like, you claustrophobic? I'm like, no, I'm not good. Slide in there. Immediately, I'm like, I guess I am claustrophobic. Get me out of here. Eye mask. I'm taking a nap. So I do all that good stuff. And it's fine. And I'm not worried about it at all. And I go to the neurologist and I'm like, okay, I did all that. Now what? And she's like, ooh, actually, we found a spot on the MRI. Shit. So there was a little space, like a 2 millimeter, very tiny little thing on the MRI. And they didn't know what it was. And they're like, we're going to have to do a contrast scan with this, and just to check. And I'm like, cool. What do you think it is? And she's like, well, it could be nothing. It could also be like a brain aneurysm. And I'm like, what happens if it's a brain aneurysm? And she's like, you meet with a brain surgeon and they talk about putting a stent in your head and all of this stuff. And then you either track it for the rest of your life or you do a brain surgery to like address it or something. And I was like, okay, well, that sounds terrible. And it also sounds like that's what it is. So this is good. And they're like, cool. So when do we do this scan? And they're like, next week. And I'm like, great. Then when do I find the results? And they're like, well, you come back to the office the following week. So for 2 weeks, I was just agonizing over this whole thing. On the back of my mind, I thought I was bleeding out internally.
Oh, my God.
Like a very small chance. There was like a very, very tiny chance that this was actually going to kill me, but it wasn't 0. And I had to go to a wedding and I'm like on the dance floor. And there's a part of me that's like, what if I just died?
God.
What if my brain just exploded at my friend Trevor and Marika's wedding? And I just died on the floor and they were like, what? Where did this come from? And I'm like, you know what? Brain aneurysm. That could have been fun. It didn't happen. I'm here. I'm okay. And I get to the neurologist and I'm like, what's the verdict? And she's like, it's nothing. It's just you just got a big vein. And that's cool. They're just pumping extra blood in that area and everything's fine. You don't have to worry about it at all. And I'll tell you, Kevin, the weight that came off my shoulders, I felt like Goku, like training at 100 times Earth gravity.
Oh
or like,
my God.
Rock Lee dropping the weights in Naruto, like Piccolo taking off his weighted gear to fight somebody. It was like I was flying out of there,
sickest reveal of all time.
I was floating out of that thing. I could touch clouds. I was so excited. I didn't realize how much it was weighing on me. But yes, that was a little stressful 2 weeks for me where I thought potentially, life-changing diagnosis, but it wasn't. I don't know if that's a good story or not, but I realized it really bothered me for 2 weeks. I was like, that explains why everything has sucked for 2 weeks. In the back of my mind, I've just been thinking about this nonstop. So I'm clear. I'm here and I'm excited to talk about Daredevil Born Again. I feel like I'm born again in some ways that I thought I had an aneurysm and I don't. So that's great.
Wow. When you first started this story, I thought that you were just stopping my car's momentum. I was in the driver's seat of the car and I was flooring it down the highway. And now I realize that the only reason we stopped is because you had taken the wheel and driven the car in the opposite direction. That is wild.
I thought, you've been in Japan for like 5 years, so I had to come and update you with what's been going on with me. And I figured this is as good a time as any, right before the Daredevil Born Again pod, to talk about my not really near-death experience. I don't know. It's so funny. It's so funny to think things are terrible, and then you get the news that like, oh, actually, everything's fine. It's never been bad. And I don't know. It just feels like I went through a thing, but I didn't go through a thing because it's nothing. I feel like I feel like I got all hyped up. I don't know. I imagine it's like somebody tricking you into thinking you like won the lottery or something. And then you get that feeling and then you don't win the lottery and you're like, okay, well now what do I do with this feeling? Yeah.
I mean, right when we started this podcast, there was like a little gap where I think it was like our first guests came on because I had like surgery on my tongue because they found a thing and I had a biopsy. And I thought it was the same deal where I had to wait for 2 weeks, where I thought, knock on wood, that I had like a cancer spot in there. And it's the most stressed that I've ever been in my entire life, dude. It's like, it's crazy. So I'm so sorry. The thing about it is, when I went through that, I didn't have to go to a wedding in the middle of it. Congrats, by the way, Trevor and Marika.
You just had to do a pod. And we were like, what if this is your last pod?
I will say,
that sucks.
I will say, you dying on a wedding dance floor is how I've always pictured you going out. That's,
oh, man. I was like, that would be awesome. Honestly, to do that at a friend's, like a close friend's wedding and just really fuck everything up for them would be so funny. Not at the moment, but in hindsight, I think everyone would be like, yeah, that makes sense. This tracks.
Yeah. I was reading a Reddit thread about how like it was about Pope Francis dying and hilarious topic.
Hell yeah.
But it was
JD Vance killed him. Have you seen all those? He met JD Vance and then just died. I saw a great meme where it was like his wall, like right before he died, John Cena won a record-breaking 17th WWE championship. And they were like Pope Francis, they're doing like that turtle meme, like the turtle from like Kung Fu Panda, who just becomes dust and floats away. And they're like Pope Francis after watching John Cena win his 17th championship. Like, I'm at peace now, I can leave.
He was just waiting for 17. 16 wasn't enough. 18's too many. There was people talking about how Pope Francis had like a whole day for Easter. Like, he gave mass that morning. He did all kinds of stuff. And then he died that night. And there were some skeptics on Reddit being like, I don't know. How does this just happen? And then it was a thread of people sharing their personal experiences of loved ones they have who had a fucking great last day and then just passed away. And it was just a thread. It's like the exact opposite of any other Reddit thread about death. It was a whole thread of like, man, to be able to go out like that. One of them was like, yeah, my grandpa woke up. He went fishing. He played guitar for a couple hours. He grilled burgers. He had a beer, laid down for a nap, and never woke up. And it's like, that would be the best fucking last
fucking
day.
Rock and roll, dude. That guy. God, what a real
Oh,
one. What a real fucking move. Good
I
for
know.
him. Good for fucking him. Like, that's the way to go. It sucks for the people you leave behind and all of that. But as far as like, if somebody's got to go, like, fuck yeah, dude. It feels like you're going out on your terms, your way. You
Exactly.
know,
I
I'm
mean,
taking
it's
this nap.
honestly, it's,
I'm
it's
the one not waking up, Like, that's what it feels like. I ate a fucking steak before this. I'm done. I'm not going to have any other days like this.
yeah, like his body tapped out at the right time.
Yeah.
Tim, speaking of tapping out at the right time, do you think that it was a good choice for Disney to dip back into the well and bring us Daredevil Born Again? Or do you wish it had stayed a Netflix MCU show? What did you think of this one?
This was a great idea. I didn't think it was before, but this show was awesome. It is not a perfect show, but I feel like we say that about all these things where it's like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be fun. It has to be entertaining, and it has to show us, I think, a side of these characters that we haven't seen before. And they're serving us a different pitch with Matt Murdock, and they're giving us a different take on Daredevil. And then when we get the fights and we get the action, I think it's pretty darn good. It's not the same. It doesn't feel like it's the same intensity as the Netflix show, and it's certainly not as gritty and dirty as the Netflix show feels, but it's definitely a lot. I mean, this is definitely like an R-rated action, intense, gritty take for Marvel to do. The only other R-rated things they've done, right, are like Logan and Deadpool. And Deadpool's like all jokes and meta and bullshit, and Daredevil's like real topics, really tackling issues. And I don't know, I thought it was great. What did you think of Daredevil Born Again? Was it worthy of being born again?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really cool how they just pretty ruthlessly went through and shaved off parts of the original Daredevil show that they didn't want to play with. It's like borderline disrespectful to like Karen Page and especially Foggy to just be like, yeah, you're gone. You're fucking gone. You don't exist in the show anymore. I mean, I liked them in the original one. It is this weird thing. You relate to Matt Murdock in that way, where it does feel like these two very distinct chapters in his life. And there are moments in the show where he reflects on his old life. And it's when he's coming to terms with whether or not he should give into his violent nature again. And him expressing like, none of this feels real. It was a nice way to get us to relate in there.
It's a great way to set up a reboot too, because it is literally, it's him leaving his old life. It kind of justifies what we've already seen. And it's like, well, now he has a logical reason to move on and cut ties with all these old people and try and get a different take on his life. It's a character reboot, but it makes sense because after after a tragedy like that, like what happened with Foggy Nelson, anyone would be looking for a reboot, right? Like you move to a new place, you get a new job, you try and reinvent yourself, try and move on from the tragedies in your past. And I think it just worked really well. And I don't think it works as well if Karen's still around. I liked seeing her, but I don't need more Karen Page. I don't think. I liked the amount she was used in this. I thought she was good. I'm more interested with her relationship with the Punisher, to be honest, than I am with Daredevil. But I think there is something enticing about Daredevil when he's alone. And I think there's something about him brooding and having no one on his side and having to overcome the odds by himself and having to grapple with these like big moral quandaries alone that is enticing. That is fun about Daredevil specifically.
Oh, definitely. It also makes it easier for him to get drawn down that dark path when he meets up with the Punisher again. And like all the stuff they were doing with the morality there. I mean, they've really nailed it with a few of these castings. They've really nailed it with a few of these character portrayals. Charlie Cox is so good as Daredevil. Right. He's so good.
Perfect.
And Bernthal is so good as the Punisher. How fucking fun is this guy? Him in the cage at the end of the season, like the amount of like menace and charisma and danger that this guy is able to portray in a fucking cage tied up is incredible. He's a force of nature and he's a blast.
Yeah, I think he's great. I was interested to hear what you think about his interpretation of the Punisher, because I think it's different than the comics. And I think some people are like grappling with what that means, especially when now it does feel like they're getting into more like the fact that they're actually showing cops wearing Punisher gear is like a statement. It's now this is like a conversation of like, does the Punisher represent anything the police stand for? And it's like, no, I don't think they do. In the comics, this guy is like a ruthless killer. And if he thinks somebody's doing the wrong thing, he will kill them. And it doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter where they are. He thinks in black and white. And, you know, he thinks those people don't deserve to live. And I think John Berthal is great. I love him. I think he feels more of an obligation to represent him as a soldier and as a military man and as someone who takes pride in the military. And I know John has, I guess he has family in the military, or it just seems like he's tapped into that world. And I know he has like a podcast where he talks to people. He talks to a lot of cops, talks to a lot of military people. So he talks to people from that background. And I think he feels, or at least is bringing a level of that like ex-soldier military aspect to the Punisher that I don't think really exists in the comics, but I think it makes it more palatable in the MCU, if that makes sense.
Sure. I mean, it's there. It's in his backstory. One of my favorite Punisher quotes from Civil War is about basically like the backstory of the military service. It's comparing and contrasting Captain America and the Punisher, because Captain America just welcomed some supervillains onto their side. The Punisher immediately brutally murders them by shooting them in the head. And then Captain America beats the shit out of the Punisher and they have a thing. And then somebody outside of it, I forget who's saying it, but somebody outside of the fight is describing it. And he's like, it's the same guy, different wars, like Vietnam for the Punisher and World War II for Captain America. And so there is an aspect, I totally agree with you. I think that's like the main focal point of what Bernthal decided to bring to it. I think it's a really interesting take. I do wish they'd gone even harder on having him explicitly tell the cops, like, that logo does not, like, you should not wear that logo. That logo does not represent who you should be, because they kind of hinted at it, but he never actually said it. And he didn't even say it subtextually that much. Like, you can interpret what he said is coming out against it. But it was weird that, so clearly they wanted to make a political statement by having dirty cops wear the Punisher logo. And he didn't fucking say it. Like, call it out if you're going to do it. Don't dance around it.
And I think it's mixed messaging because he's talking to corrupt cops. He's talking to the villains who have very, very clearly sided with the Kingpin and are the bad guys. These aren't just cops, they are bad cops. But I think the Punisher character would really be against, and there's cops today that are like, not necessarily, I don't know if they're good cops or bad cops, but there are cops out there that throw the Punisher logo on their gear and stuff, and military guys that throw the Punisher on there. And I think that's a clashing ideology, because as a cop, you're supposed to serve and protect. And that is not what the Punisher is about. The Punisher is about his version of justice, and getting to it at all costs, at any cost, is, you know, if this person's bad, they deserve to die. And that's not how police should be functioning. And that's not how the army should be. I don't think that's how society should be functioning. And I think that's what makes the Punisher a fascinating character. And it would just be, it would have been cool to see him say something like that and take that kind of a stance. But I think they're kind of walking the line where, like, this Punisher is maybe more in line with like a good cop than he would be in the comics, I think, is more of what they're going with the MCU. Like, there's more of a morality to this Punisher than I think normally exists in the Punisher canon and ethos.
I think you're right. I think it comes down to like de facto and de jure, right? Where it's like, this is like, I think, kind of the cornerstone of the modern debate in conservative versus liberal ideology. Do you go with what idealistically we should be doing? Like, do you go with the ideal of justice, or do you go with what is actually addressing what's happening? So, like, for a lot of people, you know, if you're going to be a cop, my ideology, I think your ideology, is that you are there to serve and protect. It's the same thing where people are saying, hey, we need to kind of distribute the roles that are given to police officers a little bit more. So the same people that have SWAT gear all over them are not the people that you call in if you have a mental health crisis that isn't necessarily dangerous or in danger of escalating, because that's a situation that can too easily escalate if the person that is dealing with it has seen a lot of trauma and a lot of violent situations in the past and might not be the person that's trained appropriately to handle that, but is trained appropriately to use lethal force. It's just kind of like, why are all these roles in the same person? We need to distribute that a little bit more. In the same vein, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, are theoretically, according to, the letter of the law, everybody in the United States is due process. And like, if you've committed a crime, the authorities are there to, subdue you and bring you in front of a courtroom so that you can be tried using evidence from that. Whereas I feel like there are a lot of people who aren't necessarily all the people who are putting the Punisher logos on their stuff, but are probably a lot of them who are instead seeing like, hey, I see a lot of fucked up shit all the time. And their perspective on it is like, and it's my job, just like I've watched other people in this uniform shut it down. It's my job to shut it down. So they're coming at it with the perspective of like, their own lived experience combined with what they've seen and what's been sold to them as the image of what the cops, quote unquote, actually are versus the letter of what like the cops are supposed to be. And I mean, you kind of get into a little bit of that with the Matt Murdock character too, which I think this has the best that we've seen so far of having him balance the morals of his legal obligations and his like obligations toward justice as a lawyer, and trying to balance what is and isn't okay for him to do as a vigilante to then still be able to go show his face in a courtroom and like, I don't know, get people off. All this stuff, all the interactions with him and that one specific dirty cop were so interesting in this. And like that scene where he kind of mouths off to him after the trial in the courtroom and the cop like slams up against the door and they're talking shit to each other. And it's like, man, I love it when it bleeds over, when law bleeds over into the vigilante life and when vigilante life bleeds over into law,
Yes. And to touch on, because you're kind of touching on like police reform and all that good stuff. Yeah. And I don't know if we need to get completely sidetracked with that, but I think all of these things are like very nuanced, complicated issues. And there's obvious improvements that can be made to these things. And I think as far as the Punisher fitting into policing, I don't think the Punisher has any place in policing. Honestly, he doesn't have any. If cops have rules and laws that they follow, then they're not the Punisher. And I'm sorry. I understand that. I think being a cop is a hard job. And I think sometimes we like tend to dismiss the fact that, a lot of cops feel like when they put on the uniform, they've got targets on their backs, and like they're inherently risking injury and life by doing this occupation. And I think there is a certain type of like mental, like you got to psych yourself up for that. And maybe putting the Punisher logo on something helps you put on the uniform in the morning. And so, I mean, I think these are like psychological things that I think could be discussed and explored. I also think, when there's a school shooting and a cop outside has a Punisher phone case, have you seen that picture where there's like some sort of a school shooting and the Punisher logo is on like some cops like iPhone case and he's just standing outside letting the shooter like do his thing. And it's like, so this is like exactly the opposite of what the Punisher would do, right? You're putting the Punisher logo on and you're just standing there. Like the Punisher would go in and kill the bad guy and save the day. And then he would leave and he would do it in the most brutal way possible. And you're not doing that. So why are we pretending with this Punisher thing? Like, I don't know. It's
like watching a guy in a Superman t-shirt litter. I was just like, what are you fucking doing?
I was just thinking that, like, at a certain point, like, I understand it's fun to pretend, I guess, but at the end of the day, like, it's BS. It's just posturing, And I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
that's not to get bogged down in it, but I think the Punisher is super interesting. I didn't realize the Punisher was going to be in this. So the reveal that Punisher and specifically Berthal is back, it was very, very cool. And Daredevil like kicked ass in this, man. What do you think of like the action in this? Did you think the fighting was worth it? Do you think we got our money's worth?
I thought it was largely great. I am one of the people who didn't care for the opening fight scene just because it felt so CGI composited. And I don't know if it's one of those deals like Captain America where they actually did shoot it live on set in front of, or like live on location in front of cherry blossoms, but then it looked CGI as hell. I don't know if it's one of those or if it actually was shot on the volume or what they did, but that felt like if it's going to be this much CG, just do CG. But the other fight scenes I thought were fucking great, dude. I thought the vast majority, Daredevil versus Murmur was amazing. When Kingpin was beating the crap out of Adam, that was nuts. I mean, most of the action in this show was so unbelievably good. Matt Murdock out of costume against the dirty cops in the apartment was like maybe the best fight scene in the show.
Yeah, that was great. Just him getting ambushed by these guys and just breaking their arms and stuff. It's so good. And I mean, gosh, this guy is so good. The Matt Murdock actor, I'm not blanking on his name.
But Charlie Cox.
Charlie Cox is so good at these action scenes, and he gets so passionate. And him and John both are just like, they're like breathing hard. They're like hyperventilating. They're like, like fighting is like an emotional experience for them. Like every time Daredevil fights, it feels like in this show, especially, he's being forced to fight, and it's taking an emotional toll on him every time. And so even though I think we got probably a little less violence than I was expecting and a little less action in some of these episodes, all the action felt important to me. It felt like there were emotional consequences to each fight, and each one took something out of Matt Murdock and sent him on this path back to being Daredevil, which was great.
Totally. It's so cool. It grounds what he's doing too, especially with this being, a real person. The scene in the first episode where Bullseye is escaping up the stairs and Matt Murdock just has a bunch of shit sticking out of him. He's been stabbed and stuff. He's had the crap kicked out of him already. And he's just slowly looming his way up those stairs like Michael Myers. That is the coolest shit. That was so goddamn cool. I love all of that.
It's awesome. Is Vincent D'Onofrio growing on you at all?
He is, but just because it's so fucking specific of a take. It's one of those things where I feel like watching people do impressions of him on TikTok is helping win me over for the actual character. I really love my thing with Kingpin that I love this episode or this season is they did the episode where at the end of it, they're playing with the dynamic where they're cutting back and forth between Matt and Fisk, both giving into their violent nature, as they keep saying. At the same time, we think Fisk kills Adam. The reveal later that he didn't kill Adam in that scene, that's great. That was a good reveal.
Yeah, I still don't necessarily love his like choices acting wise with the Kingpin, but I think what they're doing with the Kingpin and even him being slimmed down at the beginning and then gaining weight as the show's going and eating progressively worse and just like becoming the Kingpin again. It's so interesting. I don't feel like I got a satisfying answer for like, why did he want to be mayor in the first place? Unless he always wanted to do this Red Hook project and that was always his motive. But it seemed like he was genuine for a little bit, but maybe he was just pretending to be genuine because ultimately he wanted to do this Red Hook thing. And maybe he's been corrupt the whole time. Maybe that was it. But it did kind of feel like he was pulled back into corruption. And there was even like a physical change to his body of him becoming like bigger and more of the Kingpin. And he kind of like leaned into his like Kingpin tendencies throughout the season. So it feels kind of like, it feels like he got pulled into it. After it feels like he made a genuine attempt to be mayor and then got pulled back into a life of crime. But that doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, I'm iffy on that. The Red Hook plot itself is great, so I'm happy to like have that now. But I'm right there with you. I don't fully understand why he would want to go legit. Yeah. What do you think of Baby Soprano?
Oh, he's great. I don't understand I think he's the perfect villain for our time, where he's just like a slimy, annoying white guy who's like kissing ass and like groveling on everything. And I don't understand his relationship with B. I don't understand how they're friends. I guess they're both using each other and pretending to be friends. I think that's it. They're just
such a good point.
They're both using each other, I guess, but they also both seem to actually be friends, which is weird. And it's like these are all deal breakers. I feel like every interaction they have, I'm like, this is a sign to not talk to this person anymore. Like, move on, get over it.
He doesn't really fit in at the club.
He doesn't fit in at the club
that night.
But also I get why that guy wants to be at the club. And he's such like a sneeze. He's just like a weasel. And I just think he makes a great hateable character. And I think that actor's killing it. I mean, I hate this guy. I don't like seeing him on my screen. And I think that's a testament to how good that character is. I did want to say, I just acknowledge the finale and how the finale ramped up so hard. Like this thing ramped up to 11. And then they leave us hanging. And I'm like, I guess we're getting a season 2. And now it sounds like we're getting a Punisher, like half an hour long special or something like that. And I can't wait for these. I can't wait for these. And I think this was a little different than the usual. Sometimes I feel like I watch a show and then by the finale, it's like, oh, this is what they wanted to do the whole time. Right. Where it's like, oh, so this season was a waste of our time. We could have just started with the finale. But this felt like it really, really built to something. And I am a little concerned about whether or not we're going to get the payoff in season 2, because it feels like it built up so much that if they're going to give us another show, how are they going to deliver on all of this? How are they going to land this plane? You know,
I think they can do it. I really do. I think they can make this work. I am with you. I don't think everything's perfect. There are some things, you know, on one level, it's cool to see him have the billy clubs that have grappling hooks on them. But on another way, every single time they showed him, it was so silly and it broke the reality immediately for me. But then they'll do something where like he uses the grappling hook to stab through Murmur's shoulder. And that's the coolest shit that I saw that episode. That's unreal. So they have this ability where they'll have some things that lose me, but then they win me back twice as hard. So I think second season is going to be just like that.
Yeah, I think so. It's going to be great.
Listener,
can't wait for it.
What do you think? Are you just as stoked for season 2? Do you want to hear more about season 1? We barely got into it. We talked a lot of Punisher in this one. Let us know if you want another Daredevil Born Again episode. And tune in next week. We're talking about Sinners. We'll see you there. Thanks so much for listening. Until next week, stay nerdy, everybody.
Stay nerdy. Bye. And, you know, real police reform would be a good idea.
Yeah, it would be great.